Alright, so this is a Patreon Q&A. I want to start by giving a massive thank you to Iron, Justin, Nix, EXP, ParanormalBeluga, and Jedi Knight 104. I can't say it enough, guys. Thank you so much. Like always, for anyone who's unaware and thinking about joining to get into the next Q&A, I'll leave a link in the description in case you want to sign up, or you could just search it yourself at patreon.com/Izanami. By signing up, you also get a shout out not just here, but in every single video, and are open to asking any 1 or 2 questions for the monthly Q&A that I do here every month. But with that out of the way, guys, let's just get into the video. We got a lot to talk about here. Alright, so the first question is coming from Nix EXP. It says, how strong do you think Siegfried will be once he takes the field against humans or gods? Alright, so I know you worded the question in a way that implies Siegfried fighting either for the gods or fighting for humanity, but for the sake of this discussion, I'm just gonna assume Siegfried ends up fighting for humanity. And when it comes to characters like Siegfried or even Adamus, I've always considered them fighting at one point or another, right? Because this whole manga revolves around characters not just only fighting each other, but fighting in general. So now it begs the question as to who he fights and where, whether it happens in Ragnarok or not. But if you go back to chapter 65, when Buddha first mentions Siegfried to Kentoki, he very specifically refers to him as the man who will shake up Ragnarok. And from my understanding, this was pretty much the deal breaker, right? Because how else would anyone shake up Ragnarok if they're not actually fighting in it? And I think this went over a lot of our heads when we first read the chapter because of the massive name drop. So it feels reasonable to assume Siegfried ends up fighting in the tournament, but the reason I'm leaning on him fighting for humanity is based on a lot of the actual lore behind him. And given the way the story likes to warp and build on real world legends and mythology, it wouldn't surprise me if Siegfried ends up becoming the strongest human fighter we've seen in the entire story. Now, I'm totally prepared to being 100% wrong about this, right? But if you have any idea of who Siegfried is, then you probably already have a rough idea of where I'm going with this. And considering everything we've been getting between Buddha and Brunhild, it's like the story's been slowly building towards whatever Brunhild's true and ulterior motives are for Ragnarok. Because one of the things that's always bothered me is why haven't we seen Brunhild fight yet, right? I mean, I understand it from the perspective of just telling the story. It makes a lot more sense to keep her in the background as we read through each and every round until it's finally her turn, but you would think she would want to set an example for her sisters by having fought already, right? But no, she just watches and gives orders from the sidelines, and I'm not trying to criticize her at all. Again, it makes sense for her to play the narrator for us as the readers, but I don't know, this is something that's always been in the back of my mind. But now that it seems like Siegfried is going to fight, I think this could be why. Maybe she's been saving herself as the Volund for Siegfried. And going back to what I had said earlier about how the manga likes to reinvent real world myths and legends for a lot of its characters, it's just so ironic because it feels like if Siegfried not only could but should fight anyone in Ragnarok, it would be Odin. And I don't have the time here to make this a history lesson, but if you know the story of Brunhild and Siegfried, then you can pretty much connect the dots here. And given everything we've been seeing happen with Odin up until this point in the story, it's like everything is slowly setting the stage for Odin as the final and true antagonist. But I can't really go any deeper than this, guys. I would just be writing the entire story by that point. But if somehow this ends up becoming true, then I can totally see Siegfried as the strongest human fighter yet, if it means him having this massive fight with Brunhild versus Odin. And if you're familiar with the mythology of Siegfried or Sigurd, then I'm sure you have your own interpretation on everything I just said, and that's totally fine with me. But because of how the story likes to reimagine a lot of these historical figures, then there really is no way to rely on the actual mythologies. That's why I said you'd have to just connect the dots for yourself, or it would be me pretty much just writing the rest of the manga if I tried to get more into it. So at the very least, if Siegfried and Brunhild versus Odin becomes our grand finale of the manga, then I'm sure it makes him one of the most impressive fighters we'll get to see, if not the most. Alright, moving on to the next question. This one's from Justin. It says, if Zeus hadn't taken Shiva's turn, who do you think Zeus would have fought from the human side? Side note, I think Zeus indirectly saved Shiva's life by taking his turn. Okay, so if you've seen my video on Shiva versus Adam, then you probably already know how I feel about the second statement, but as for who Zeus would have fought, I'm gonna go back to chapter 13 for this. This was when Brunhild was stressing over who to send out to fight against Poseidon for round 3. And curiously, we're shown the name of 3 fighters here: Nostradamus, King Leonidas, and Chin. But we gotta back up a bit because it's in this same chapter where she's stress eating over Zeus defeating Adam. She says, "That dirty old old geezer, he beat one of my best humans. So this is interesting because we know Brunhild was determined to win round 2 after Thor won, and even though she sent out one of her best humans, we also still never even see her consider sending out Nostradamus, Leonidas, or Chin for round 2. So you can see how Brunhild values them over Adam despite her calling him one of her best fighters, and we can't forget Nostradamus is her Joker. She is specifically saving his turn for the right moment because of how powerful he is, but she also chooses Chin to fight Hades over Nostradamus because of the whole ruler versus ruler matchup. In other words, we've already seen how she holds Chin and Nostradamus in high regard so much later on in the story, so I think when we see her stressing out over who to send out for round 3 and looking at Nostradamus, Leonidas, and Chin, it was probably gonna be any of these 3 who were gonna end up fighting Zeus. But as for who specifically, I have no idea. I mean, maybe Chin, right? Because he is a king, so she could have still planned that whole king versus king matchup like she had originally, but with Zeus instead. However, it's hard to tell just yet. I mean, for all we know, it could have been Leonidas or Nostradamus, right? I'm sorry, I know I'm not really answering your question, but for what it's worth, I think we'll know for sure after all 3 of them fight. Alright, and we got the next question here from Iron. It says, if you had to come up with a spin-off to Record of Ragnarok, what would you base it around? I think seeing how this universe's Trojan War played out would be awesome. Alright, so I think about this a lot actually, and there's 3 characters I would want it most for: Thor, Shiva, and Chin. Especially for Thor and Chin because it feels like their backstories were more centered on their journey more than those around them, and I know Chin had Chunyan, but if you compare Chin and Thor's backstories to everyone else, there's just so many more characters in them, so I don't know. I also consider Chin and Thor as the coolest characters we've gotten, so that's just heavy bias on my part. And Shiva's backstory just feels like it could have been an entire manga altogether. Like his climb with Rudra to the top and their fights with all these other gods is something I just wanted more of. And that's probably because it felt very shonen heavy, right? Like the typical climbing the ladder to the peak that most shonen manga like to do, so I could only imagine what a full Shiva spin-off would accomplish. Alright, and the next and last question here is from ParanormalBeluga. It says, what humans and gods do you want the most to win? So now that round 8's officially started, we only have so many fighters left, right? So on the god side, there's Loki, Apollo, Susanoo, Odin, and Anubis, and on humanity's side, there's Simo, Rasputin, Leonidas, Nostradamus, Okita, and Kentoki. And because that means only 6 rounds left in Ragnarok, if we're assuming the gods find someone else to add and even out the roster, I'll answer by choosing just 6 from the 11 names I just mentioned, so I'd probably go with Susanoo, Anubis, and Odin on the god side. And from humanity, I would pick Kentoki, Rasputin, and Leonidas. Ironically, I'm more interested in the few gods we have left than the remaining human fighters, but I wouldn't even say that really matters. The story is just so good at making me care for characters I did not expect to, so I'm sure I'll change my mind with the more characters we get revealed. I wouldn't say my answer here is permanent, but I think this is where I'm gonna wrap it up, guys. Thank you so much for your questions and supporting me with the channel. I can't wait to do this again next month. And I know a month is a long time away, and I've been really thinking about doing these Q&As weekly, so if we can get to 10 patrons, I think that would be enough questions, but there is no pressure, guys. This is just an idea in case you were wanting to join in. As I said before, if you're interested and also want to be in the next video, from now until the end of September, feel free to consider joining. You'd also be helping me out a lot here in a massive way and get a special shout out like this in every single video. The link will be in the description below, or you could just search it yourself at patreon.com/Izanami. But other than that, guys, again, thank you so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think in the comments. I would greatly appreciate it. And yeah, have a great day.